G'day, g'day. This is Rita Joyan, and welcome to the Unbox Your Gift podcast. Today we've got with us Licia Heath. Licia, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for having me.
You know, I was telling you before we press record that I'm excited to have you because you are the CEO, the Chief Executive for Women for Election.
That's right.
And so you running the organization that provides training for women to prepare them to get into a position of government, whether that be local, state, or federal. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
So now my first question to you is to find out exactly how did you even get into this position to navigate or just clear the terrain for women to find their space in a political arena. So how did you get into the role of CEO?
Yeah, well, great question. And I mean, it explains, I've had a bit of an unusual journey, I would say, the last 5 years. But, I had a wonderful career in finance and funds management for a long time. And I was sitting at my desk, I guess, getting increasingly agitated when I look back at the political landscape, not just in Australia, but overseas as well. And I guess getting frustrated, like many people, many listeners, no doubt, about what seemed to me to be fairly straightforward paths that we needed to take in terms of policy, but the complete lack of movement and execution on those policies. And I ended up taking a sabbatical from my career, thinking that I might aim for a career change, really. So I took a sabbatical in 2017, and I spent that whole year, had a whiteboard in my office at home. I didn't know exactly what my future career would be, but I did know it would be something about improving the landscape of Australia's politics. And I spent that whole year meeting with politicians, think tanks, policy producers, staffers, heads of not-for-profits and all sorts of things, writing this flowchart back on my whiteboard of where I thought things were going wrong. And I came across an organization called Women for Election in my year. And I was an attendee at the first ever training event that they ran in 2017, which is in New South Wales Parliament House. And it clearly fizzed me up because 5 months later, I was on their board, and then I was helping them with their strategy and putting together future training events and working out the agenda for events. And so I was attending a lot of things that they were running as a board director. And there was a couple of things that I just kept hearing over and over and over through those sessions, which was because I thought I would want to run one day myself. That's what I thought. But I didn't have immediate ambition to do it. It was just a one-day scenario. But I kept hearing from all those politicians, you'll never feel ready. You'll never feel ready to run.
Like having a baby. You never feel ready.
You will never feel ready, but step forward anyway. And the other message over and over was timing is everything. So if you have the opportunity to run when there's been some massive disruption in some way, then your likelihood of either getting elected or massively influencing the outcome is really magnified. And then within a matter of months, within my federal electorate, which was the seat of Wentworth, where my local MP was also the Prime Minister, he stepped down, and that thrust our electorate into a by-election. Very unexpectedly. It was going to decide the balance of power in Parliament. The whole nation was focused on it, and I decided to step forward, even though I wasn't ready. Wow. And that experience was one of the most positive of my life.
Really?
Yeah, it was the exact opposite, literally, to what 99.9% of people told me, they said, don't do it, Licia, you know,
Oh,
you're going to get trolled, they're going to go garbage, you're going to get, it was so positive, and I didn't win, but I did change the conversation just by running, and the ultimate winner adopted my policy platforms in full, which is a win.
Wow. And that was Karen Phelps who won?
That was Karen Phelps, yeah. And so, and it just reframed my whole, oh, hang on, there's lots of definition of success when you run. It's not just about getting elected. And once the dust settled on that, I went back to the board of Women for Election and said, I'd like to be the inaugural CEO. I had so many women approach me in my own campaign saying, can I buy you lunch or coffee at the end of this? Because I'd like to do the same thing one day, but I have no idea how to get started. And my pitch to the board was, you know, we're playing down here and we could be up here. There's a real need, but we need a dedicated CEO. I'd like to be that person. And that was 3 years ago.
And you found your calling. Isn't that amazing? You went through one avenue and it detoured you to what you're doing right now. Isn't that just fascinating?
I knew I wanted a role in improving Australian political landscape, but I didn't know what that was. And I guess I kind of invented a role.
How entrepreneurial.
Yeah, well, you know, it's in the benefit of hindsight, and you see it's about taking the opportunities when they present, and that is something that is key to a lot of the training that we do now as well.
So take a deep breath when you're like, it's like when you're jumping into the pool and you're like, and the cold just kind of catches you. That's how it feels like when you're jumping in and you don't think you've got all the tools.
Well, you don't, yeah. My 6-year plan got compressed to 6 weeks. And guess what? I not only did I survive, I thrived. And that's why coming out that other end going, well, hang on, all that hideous stuff that everybody told me would happen, none of it happened. And that is not to minimize at all that sometimes that stuff happens. It's not to minimize that, but it doesn't always happen. And culturally, I think in Australia, we are very, very well informed as a public about all the negatives of going into politics, overly informed. But we don't focus enough. And again, that's part of our mission on highlighting all the benefits that come when just ordinary people and the public engage and run, and on occasion get elected. Many more benefits than negatives.
So, Licia, that's really important. So then because I've always been very, I guess, cautious of politics because of that. In fact, when I was in high school, I remember talking to my friends and saying, you know, I think I might go into politics. And my history teacher that I loved her, she heard me. She said, Rita, I had more respect for you. And I just went, oh, so it must mean that politics is, and that stuck with me because I thought maybe politics is something that devalues you.
Yep. And so there you go, exhibit A. And I've been at barbecues where, you know, somebody, be it a man or a woman, says, you know what, I think I might run for local council when the elections come up. And then the 8 people in that circle go, are you crazy? Da, 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 you know, and what we need to do, and I think this is something that's changing now, and it's so inspiring for me, is when someone says that, we go, yes, you should go for it. I'd love to see someone like you elected. How can I help?
Now that would be refreshing. That would be refreshing. So tell me, Licia, I know the benefit for yourself was the fact that you ran, and then that paved the way for you to becoming CEO for Women for Election. But what other benefits are there for running, even if you don't get elected?
Oh, look, there's so many measures of success that and, you know, women who attend our course, it's something that we get them to write down, saying, why is it that you want to run? Are you pissed off? Are you passionate? Is it because you're political? You know, the 3 Ps we call it. Maybe it's a combination of all 3. But what is it that you want to achieve? Do you want to get elected? And if it is because you want to get elected, why do you want to be elected? Like, what is it that you want to achieve? Because we don't need more people elected that are there because ego's driving them. That's not what we need more of. But the measures of success might be that somebody else sees you run and you inspire them that they could do the same thing as well. You don't even know that you've done that, but that could be one measure of success. Another could be that you won't get elected this time, because on average it takes 3 times to run to get elected, and that's not gendered. That's the same for men.
Really?
So, yeah. Julia Gillard ran 3 times before she got elected. She talks about that. So, this idea of, well, I'm not going to run because I don't have the skills yet to get elected. Well, here's what I'm telling you. The likelihood that you get elected the first time is small. So let's, shed that fear about I'm not ready. Because you'll use that, you'll increase your skill, you'll increase your profile, you'll increase your following, your volunteer network. The sooner you start, the closer you will be to getting elected. Okay. So it might be that you're starting that path. It might be that you're worried that if you don't get involved in an election, whether it's a federal or state or involved in your local council, that a certain issue just isn't going to be raised because it's a contentious issue. So if you step forward and say, I know you don't want to talk about asylum seeker reform, or I know you don't want to talk about how polluted the local lake is, because that's going to not shine well on the incumbent, but I'm going to make you talk about that. So, it just brings an integrity to the whole process, and honesty and diligence to the incumbent as well. So there's lots of measures of success.
Okay, thank you for that. So then if I am listening to this and I think, what if I were to, dip my toe in and think, what is it about to be elected for office? Like, how does the process go? What's step one that you would encourage me to do?
Well, for the first point is we've put a lot of resources on our website about, so you're thinking about getting elected. Well, here's some things that you should consider. Is it what's important to you? If it's local sustainability, then maybe getting involved at the local government level is interesting for you. If it's public education, then maybe it's the state level. Yeah. If it's economic reform, then it'd be the federal level. So these, understand which lane it is that you're interested in. Do you want to run for a major party, or do you want to run as an independent? Do you want to run as a minor party? Okay. It's our mission is to make what is currently very opaque more transparent.
Yes.
Because when it's opaque, people don't engage. But the more transparent you make it, the more likely people are to step into it. And I would argue particularly women as well. Women want just that extra, all the data and research shows that women want that extra amount of information before they step into a role. And politics is no different. So let's make it transparent. So come to one of our events, be it one of our masterclasses or our candidate training, or we run networking events. Dip your toe in the water, and then you work out what you don't know, and we can help fill that gap.
And that's womenforelection.org. Is that the website?
Yeah, it's wfe.org.au.
wfe.org.au. Brilliant. Okay.
Yep.
So I was going to ask that question. How would you know if you're wanting to run for local, state, or federal? But as you said, depends on the issues that you feel passionate about. Is where you would go. Does it make a difference? Is it easier at local level to run than it is for federal, for example?
It definitely does. So that 1 in 3, if you're looking at local government, you're a lot more likely to be elected the first time you run at the local government level. And also there's thousands and thousands of positions across the country for local government. So you're talking about a bigger universe of positions as well. And then, that ratchets smaller for state governments and then smaller again for federal. So just on a straight mathematical basis. But it's interesting because I think too often a lot of people dismiss local government as as an not worthy of their time level of government. But gee whiz, if people knew exactly how much decision making sits at the local government level, then I think they would change their mind. And you flip that on its head. If when they're absent from that chamber, poor decisions can occur as well. And it's a natural launching pad for state and federal politicians as well.
So it would be an easier transition into state and then federal should you go for local level government?
Yeah, easier for some people, I think. Not everyone feels they need to do that path, but it's a great training ground. And actually, I've asked the Federal Parliamentary Library right now to do some research just to look at all the current MPs and senators, because I want to know how many of them started their career in council.
Oh, in council. Wow. Okay. That would be like, are you okay? Take a drink, you poor thing.
I know, I was trying to fight that. Sorry.
No. Feel free to take a drink anytime. That's no problem. So that would be an interesting research into who did actually start at the very local level. I mean, you have to be, I guess what my question is, what do you see? So when someone comes to you and they come to your event, what kind of trainings do you give someone to get them, ready to rock and roll and get a feel for the terrain that is politics and being elected?
Yeah, well, there's a number of different courses that we run. I would say our bread and butter course is called our Equip course. And that is really running through the A to Z of how you would run a campaign and everything that you need to know about it, from making sure that you're eligible to run, to completing paperwork, to understanding what the financial commitment would be, what the time commitment would be, how to build a campaign team, how to accept donations in a governance framework. Literally it goes, it really is breaking down the whole thing into a to-do list, and then how that might alter a little bit if it's at the council level versus the federal level, how it just scales up and scales down, and also what it would look like if it's with a major party or a minor party or as an independent. Nothing's that divorced from each other in terms of how it looks. There's just some nuances that people need to know about. And how would they know about it? It's just, some would say, and I think I'm in that camp, it's kept deliberately opaque. And I also do believe, like your history teacher or like the people, sometimes that narrative that is politics is toxic. Sometimes I think that's maintained to keep us out as well, because too often I hear the people that are saying that, like, don't get involved, you wouldn't want to be a part of it, it's dog eat dog stuff, is often somebody who's elected who runs again. So it can't be all that bad. So, and I'm just on this mission now to say, just keep in mind that maybe that narrative is maintained to keep some of us out, and I'm not playing that game anymore.
Wow, that's a very interesting way of seeing it. So to keep because I have never, I interviewed the Chief Minister of Canberra, I interviewed the opposition leader and one of the ministers, and I was trying to dissect from them how it works, how they did their campaigns, because how else do you find out about these things? Like you can't Google it, you can get some definitions, but no one to explain like what you're doing. You sit down and I'm going to take you through step by step what's involved, because I know pre-selection is a whole different gamut than when you're actually going for the. So what's involved in pre-selection? So that's before you can say I'm going to run, you have to be selected if you're running with a party. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And in fact, that's some of the other courses that we run. So we run a series of masterclasses as well. And this month's masterclass was on pre-selection. So we had someone from the Labor Party, someone from the Liberal Party next to each other talking about their pre-selection processes. I don't know if that's ever happened anywhere before, but you know, we made it happen. So I think, yeah, pre-selection is like the campaign that you run before you run your political campaign. And depending on which party you're with, depending on which state you're in, then the nuances of how that process runs is a little bit different. So it's important not only to have good visibility about how it works, but also have a bit of a champion through that process as well. Somebody that can just carve the path in front of you a little bit to help you through the machinations of pre-selection. But you know, I think again, we spend a lot of time working with the major parties about what we do. And, you know, there's some women that come through our courses and then say, right, Licia, can you help me connect into the South Australian Liberal Party now? Or can you help connect me into the New South Wales Labor Party? Because I want to run, you know, my values align with those parties and I want to run. But it's important for everyone to keep in mind that how people used to find out about this information was joining a party and attending local branch meetings and finding out on the ground. But as we know, membership of the parties is in decline. There's
for both parties.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. For all parties, pretty well.
Oh, okay.
And for all membership-based organizations as well, whether that's Scouts or the tennis clubs, or, you know, the member people are not paying up to be members of things as much as they used to be. So if that was the old way of how you used to find out about it, and people aren't doing that anymore, how do they find out? Well, that vacuum is what I think we're filling, particularly for women and non-binary folk. So
well, that's what excited me when I just even read the title of what you do, because I thought, oh, women for election, like what is it that they do? And I got so excited reading about you guys, because I thought, where has this been? I mean, I've never noticed them. And I wanted to just also emphasize the fact that the master classes that you run, obviously you just said you finished one on pre-selection. You will be running those again, like the continuous classes that people can just join.
Yeah, they're open to the public. Like they'll be on our website. We're scheduling out our 2023 calendar right now. So I'm hoping in the next 4 weeks, you'll see at least the first 6 months of 2023 up on our website in terms of future candidate training and also masterclass series as well.
Nice. So if somebody were to enroll into one of the classes, the masterclasses or the equip course, and goes through it and says, actually, no, this is not for me, that's okay for them to just go, I now understand?
Oh my Lord. Yes. Look, there's a good percentage of women who go through our equip course who come out the other side and say, right, I'm crystal clear now, I don't want to run. And that's still success, because that's an informed decision as distinct from deselecting something that you haven't even considered before. But I tell you what, those women who decide they don't want to be front of house, they understand the process fully now, and they are 100% committed to helping another woman get elected, because they understand that it takes a team to get one person elected. And now they see how their skill set can plug into the different skills that are required in a campaign team. So, you know, I think not everyone wants to be front of house. And that is that is fine and as it should be. But there's so many different roles that people can help. And it's been very inspiring for me to see that women suddenly are volunteering on campaigns, and they've never even done that in their entire life. You know, they're 55 years old, never handed out for anyone, but now they're being a scrutineer for someone on election night because they know what a scrutineer is, because we're not taught. We're not taught.
Well, what is a scrutineer?
Yeah, there you go. So a scrutineer is the person that once all the ballots come in, you know, it's 6 p.m. and voting closes, all that back of house roles start happening when they're counting the votes. And a scrutineer is somebody that works for, you know, the ALP candidate or the Liberal candidate, Greens, or the independent candidate, and they watch those. They scrutinize. They watch those votes being put in their different piles, and then they watch how those piles then move into different piles as preferences get distributed. So they're like they have to keep their hands behind their back. They're not allowed to touch any of the votes, but they're the ones that oversee that the right things are happening. And that 1 is a 1, that's not a 7, that's a 1. Put that in the 1 pile.
I never knew that one. I thought we just, it's on a trust basis. We're going to trust people that are counting. They're going to do the right, but I didn't know there was scrutineers.
Yeah, each candidate gets to have scrutineers into each of those polling places. So
that's an important role. Now that is ginormous.
Nothing will teach you more about how Australia's voting system works, as in how preferences distribute and things like that, than being a scrutineer.
Okay.
Yeah, go do it, Rita. I want you
convincing me to be a scrutineer.
Yeah. Or, you know, the Victorian Electoral Commission, NT Electoral Commission, Australian Electoral Commission. Before each election, they're always looking for staff or volunteers. And so that's another great way to go and learn about it. It's fascinating, and it's a great education process that everybody should get exposed to at some point.
I love that. I love that. You know, I wanted to comment on, because I'm in Canberra, and the one Senate seat that was occupied, I think, for 20 years by the Liberal candidate has just, in this election this year, has been ousted by an independent who has never run before, David Pocock. And what I'd like to ask you, the fact that because you said it takes a minimum of 3 goes before you get elected, and he got in the first go as an independent, hoisting off a warm seat for a Liberal. What do you think played into that? How did he get elected first go?
Well, look, that 3 times is an average, obviously. So you get a Zali Steggall and a David Pocock every now and then you get somebody that's run for 7 times and gets elected. So look, there was a phenomenon across the country, wasn't there, in terms of searching for independents' names on ballot sheets that just hasn't occurred before, and a greater quantum of independents that we were able to vote for as well. So a lot unprecedented in that respect. In the ACT, to run as an independent for the Senate, your ability to get elected is much better than if you were running as an independent in New South Wales, for example. So for the Senate as well. So there are some places where, and the ACT is one of them, where it just, the maths stacks up a lot better than in other places.
Really?
So, you know, I was watching the ACT closely because one of our graduates was running against David, and so, but you know, David's and I have firsthand experience of this, Rita, running as an independent myself and against Karen Phelps. And then, you know, when somebody enters that has a high profile and a high public following, your work is cut out for you then. It's very hard to grab the mic from that point on. So, and Canberra seems to have largely got in behind David, which is fantastic. And his workload is going to be considerable in the
Yes, yeah. And I do echo what you're saying there. To have a profile is something that just distinguishes you. It's like the advantage that you really need. You know, it totally. And he did, because he was the captain of the football Wallabies. I think it was football.
Yeah, yeah, the Wallaby, yeah, rugby union, yeah.
Rugby.
Yeah.
And so for that, I mean, I personally didn't know who he was. Just a candidate to me. I don't watch a rugby union, so I didn't know. But many others did, obviously, and therefore, gave him that platform, because there are other independents that were, competing against him as well, who didn't rank at all, but because of his profile. So do you think that establishing a profile is something is worth value before jumping in?
Well, it's certainly something that we talk about in our courses. Now, again, if you're running for a federal seat versus your local government seat, then, you need a profile that's fit for purpose for the level that you're running for. And remember, you need a profile for those in your electorate. So that's who votes for you at the end of the day. So and this is what is, this is why we did this massive campaign power like you've never seen before the federal election. So many women are known in their local community for doing amazing work. They might run a big campaign on something. They might run a Facebook page that has 5,000 followers. They might run the local PNC or the, Eastern Suburbs AFL Auskick or something like that. So they have a community presence. If you say to them, you've got a community presence, they'll go, no, I don't. But they do. And so often they are doing 9/10 of what a good political representative does, which is being out in the community, seeing what needs improving in the community, and then improving it.
That's it.
That's the role of a politician. Yeah. And what I see women do all over the country every day, and they've always done it. They've always been the power in the local community that keeps the community going. It's nearly always in a volunteer capacity, which is very noble, but it keeps us busy. And it also keeps us out of things like parliamentary chambers. So what we are doing with this campaign of, if you care, you're qualified. That is what we are doing, saying power.
That's beautiful words. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
You're qualified.
Yes, because I've traveled all over the country now, and I have just conversations over and over again with highly capable women that are already doing work with their community, might have been doing it for 1 year, might have been doing it for 40 years. And then I say to them, you should run. And they go, I can't do that. And I'd say, you're already doing it. You're already doing it. But obviously, often what they do is they'll look at that politician, who's often a man, in the chamber and say, I can't do that. And we say, good. We don't want more of that.
Wow. That's amazing.
Not what we want. We want not ego-led, community-led. So, I think part of what I've realized and grown in this position over these 3 years is that we are not an organization that provides leadership skills. We are an organization that wants women who already have the skills to self-identify as a future political leader. So, and it's a nuance, but it's just about rebranding power, Rita, is what we're doing.
Ooh, these are all slogans. You see, this is like
yeah, I know. We get some hashtags here.
So And if you were to look at, first of all, when you ran back in 2018, how long, that whole campaign, how long was that campaign for? How long did you campaign?
6 weeks.
Okay, so 6 weeks, that's 6 weeks of campaigning, and then there's work before that in preparation for that 6 weeks. So you'd say probably it took you 12 weeks all up?
Yeah, I'd say about 10 weeks. You know, a by-election is just a
Yes.
whirling dervish in terms
of
yeah, so it's like I said before, I wasn't ready.
Okay. That's the point. Yeah, you weren't ready.
I stepped forward anyway. Yeah.
And so 10 weeks. And can I please ask you, for someone that's listening right now and thinking, I know the course will tell me how much time it will take, but how much funding is required for a campaign approximately?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's such an important question. And again, it's a sliding scale. So if you're running for a council and your council is divided into wards, then that ward is who votes for you. And that might be, you know, a quadrant of streets that you can easily letterbox. So I've seen people win council campaigns with the cost of registering to run as a candidate, you know, $100. Whereas, you know, mayor of Sydney or mayor of Melbourne, you know, the big city councils, that could be in the quantum of $100,000, but that's now capped too. So you can't spend beyond, I think it might be capped now to 90,000, but don't quote me on that. So, but a standard suburban person might spend $5,000. Okay. Now a state seat might be $50,000 and a federal seat might be $100,000, but it's depends on whether you're running for a party, depends on whether you're running as an independent, depends whether you're in an you know, Wentworth, my federal electorate, is one of the smallest electorates in the country. But if you're running in one of the big rural or remote electorates, you know, that can be half the size of a state.
Wow. Okay.
And that has, if you're going to get around to the four corners of that electorate, then that is more costly. So it's not an easy question to answer, but I hope I've just given a rough. And then a big part of that is, how do you fundraise to fund that? And that's something that we've run masterclasses on fundraising, and it's a part of our Equip course as well.
Okay. Because that was going to be my next question. How do you raise the money? Because I assume, not sure, if you're running with a party, they might give you some money, do they?
Yes. So certainly if you are running with a party, then you have a lot more resources to hand. Sometimes I think, or at least the anecdotal evidence back to me is, I thought I joined a party, ran for a party. I didn't think I'd have to fundraise, but I did. In fact, that was a very big component still of my campaign. So, and then it depends what seat you're in. So if you're in a bellwether, like a highly prized seat versus a seat where you're not going to win with that party, then that funding funnel, changes as be it's
interesting. Oh my goodness.
Well, this is the thing. Let's be transparent about what happens. So, but there's no question that if you run with the party, you have more resources to hand, whether that's printing or advertising or social media team and things like that. So they're really important things to consider.
Okay. This is amazing. I'm loving this conversation. Absolutely love it, because
I want you at our next training, Rita. At our Equip training. So sign up for our Feb course.
Okay. It's coming up. So when I interviewed Licia, when I interviewed the Chief Minister, Opposition and his ministers, I asked them this one question, and I want to ask you the same. I get your response. I said to them, is politics like an instrument? It has to be well played. Or is it like a sport that you need to compete in? Or is it like being on stage, it's an act that you've got to, and it's a performing act that you have to have on. Do you think it's any of those three, or is it all three?
I think it's all three.
Yeah.
I do think it's all three. Something that we say at the outset of our Equip course, and I've got to pay homage to my co-facilitator in the Equip course, Ruth McGowan, and we talk about assumptions, and we assume if you're all here tonight wanting to learn this, then you understand that politics is competitive. It is competitive. You have to have something in your spirit that wants to forge ahead, and is happy to go out and meet people, but still know that you're in a competition. It's not a quilting class. It's a political class that we run. And it is competitive. But what always really annoys me is this idea that women may not be as competitive as men, and that is garbage. It is absolute garbage. Maybe in some ways we compete differently, but we are just as competitive. But you need that streak within you to get involved. And think about or the listeners think about when you see maybe 4 candidates in front of you at the candidate forum, and they're on the stage, and you get a sense from 3 of them that their heart is really in it, and they really want to win. And you get a sense from the 4th going, I'm not sure that person really has the competitive spirit. Voters feel that.
Yes, for sure.
And we want those that have that spirit in them, because we know that when they're in that chamber, they need to advocate for us. And they need to have that spirit to be able to do that.
On that, I'm glad you brought that up, because they need to advocate for us. I just want to draw on something for a moment. There's the new UK Prime Minister that's just been put into power, and I think he's the 4th consecutive Prime Minister without a general election that's been put into office. That's a big deal in and of itself. But I wanted just to make, there's many people who are happy because he's the first Asian Prime Minister in the UK. But also there's an equal amount of people who are not so happy, who are from an Asian background. And the reason they're not happy is because, or they're a bit hesitant, is because they say that although his parents were migrants and they came and then they built their life and he became what he's become, he is not giving that same opportunity for the people who he now represents, the same cohort. And so I wanted to ask your opinion on that, because we're advocating for women to get into office. What happens in a situation where, just like the current situation of the Prime Minister, who's not advocating for refugees or migrants because he's not, but he's from that background. And at the same token, what if women get into power and in office but don't advocate? How do you circumvent that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting and complex area as well. And people's views on Rishni now being the PM of the UK, that disparate views just shows me how you can never please all of the people all of the time. So that has to be part of your knowledge, your acknowledgement when you run and when you are a politician, that you cannot please all of the people all of the time, and that is not your role. Your role is to stick with your value set and prosecute that case. Now, just because you're a woman does not mean that you have the same value set. And we don't want it to be thus. Just because you're someone from the queer community doesn't mean that you have the same value set. Just because you're a woman of color doesn't mean that you have the same value set. What we are aiming for is that if you have gender parity in political chambers or on a board or in any sort of leadership skills, then then by virtue of that quantum, you have different value sets and different lived experience at the table that equalizes that experience. When you have, like, you know, a lot of commentary around Tony Abbott's cabinet when Julie Bishop was the only woman in that cabinet, and people frustrated with Julie that she didn't do more for women. And it's, but if you analyze with any, you know, with any clear mind, then you'll see when you're one of 15, it's hard to advocate.
Okay. Yeah.
You need to be flanked by at least a 40 to 60% ratio is what's shown, to be able to advocate and get outcomes.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And especially the added layer of a party loyalty, sticking my party values. And I guess the empathy there is great, because just because you've chosen someone from a diverse background, trying to be inclusive, doesn't mean you're going to get the results that produces that reason why you've got them in that position in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, that's where tokenism can come into things. So how you defeat tokenism is that you have the quantum to be able to choose from, a universe, you know, of 30 women of color, you know, a universe of 20 First Nations women, you know, and to be, and that is what equalizes the different value sets that you will always get, because we're dealing with people.
Yeah. Geez. Is there anything that, I mean, I've tried to cover everything that I possibly can. The barriers that women face, I know it's things like that I'm seeing around me are things that I'm not qualified enough, that I don't know what's involved, so it would be complicated. Oh,
if you care, you're qualified.
Yes. But I'm saying, like, in terms of how women, like, from the people that conversations that I have with my friends and the conversations that I hear, it's that I don't know how it works, and I don't know, it's sort of like convoluted and it's just over there somewhere. But there's no one that you can't go to a careers counselor and ask, how does it work? Because she doesn't know.
No, and that, look, I say I was 40 years old when I realized that the Senate was the same thing as the upper house.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, and I'm not embarrassed to admit it. I don't remember being taught it. I just don't, you know, unicameral, bicameral preference, you know, it's just, it is so opaque. But I think, you know, like I said before, the thing that I would want your listeners to really consider, and for them to have conversations with their girlfriends and mothers and sisters, is this notion of rebranding how we consider power, and that women just, and it's always been thus, that power that's hummed away in the background that keeps our communities together, that is powerful. And that it is that power that our political chambers need, so that we want them to self-select, to go, all right, I'm doing 9/10 of what a political representative does already. Women for Election can help with the 1/10, which is, you know, how would I run a campaign? But they don't need new skills. They don't need new leadership skills. The skills they are exhibiting every day in their community is more than enough. We just want it in our political chambers to make a difference for all Australians, not just women and girls.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love it. You make it sound, I'll tell you what, Licia, you make it sound so straightforward and easy, which is what's scary too. Like, really? You're not just having me on there, are you?
No, well, I mean, this is part of that narrative again, isn't it? It's complex. It's Look, I'm not saying that there's not lots of pieces to the puzzle, but once we show you all the puzzle pieces, then it just becomes a to-do list. You need to do this, then you need to do that, then you need to do that, then you need to do that. And I don't know a woman who can't, just mow her way through a to-do list. Because that's all it is. I know, again, it sounds like I'm being overly simplistic, but that's all it is.
Yeah. It's a to-do list. You just go through it. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. The hardest bit of any woman's campaign ever is admitting outwardly that she wants to run. And once she has actually done that, the rest is a to-do list.
Jeez,
funny, isn't it?
Jeez Louise, you're hitting buttons there.
Yeah, it's the hardest bit. Just admit at the barbecue that I want to run. I can see you, Rita. I see you. I see you.
Oh, Licia, I'm telling you, you found your calling because you're so good at what you're doing. I mean, you're advocating for something that I can feel within you, your passion, and just the way you use your words. It's just hitting. It's just hitting. It's like slam dunk.
Let's make sure this podcast gets out far and wide then, because there's still not enough women that know that we even exist.
Yes.
So any way that you and your listeners can help us do that, then I'll talk to anyone all the time.
For sure. Before I let you go, I want to ask you two questions. Number one, is there a question that you wish I would have asked you, but I haven't?
No? I love the territory that we've covered.
Okay. All right. Super duper. And then my last thing, I'm going to just give you a rapid fire round. First answer is the right answer.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay. First question is it harder or easier for women to be in politics?
Harder.
Do you prefer texting or talking?
Texting.
Yeah, me too.
I do so much talking in my life that, oh yeah.
What's given you more opportunities? What you know or who you know?
What I know. Yeah.
Every single person that I've asked that question says what they, because the premise is, it's who you know, but you've just said what you know, right?
Yeah, well, if I didn't know what I'd know, then I couldn't pull the levers of who I know.
Jeez Louise, okay, amazing. All right, thank you. What do you believe that others think is crazy?
What do I believe that other people think is crazy? Yeah, that politics isn't toxic.
Oh my God. You're just like taking all my belief systems out. You're wiring my brain here.
Yeah.
Where would you go if you were invisible?
Cabinet room.
Oh, what's the most difficult part of standing for elections?
Admitting that you want to run.
Mm-hmm. What networking method has worked for you?
Schools networks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, mums in P&Cs and things like that.
Okay.
Talk about volunteer extraordinaires and highly networked people. Yeah.
Okay. And then last question, what's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Public speaking.
Brilliant.
Such an important skill. And even when you're scared, the more you do it, the less scared you become.
Yeah, true that. Licia, thank you so much for your time. This has been eye-opening. This has literally, I didn't think I would be like, but I literally am. I'm taking deep breaths here. I'm being really cool here. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, thank you for getting in touch. And I'm just so happy that we had the opportunity to showcase what we do and, you know, our future ambitions as well. So
Yes.
thanks, Rita.
Thank you so much. And once again, it's www.wfe.org.au.
Yep, beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. And we will be back next week. Thank you, Licia.
Thanks, Rita.